Today on the podcast, we are answering your questions about boundaries for your marriage. We've heard from some listeners who have some great questions, and so we will do our best to answer them today. Before we hear Dr. Kim's answers to these questions, we want to make sure you know about our Boundaries workbook. We created the workbook as a simple guide to help make this content practical and applicable. It's designed to help both you and your marriage grow healthier. Head over to awesomemarriage.com or look in today's show notes wherever you listen to get a hold of that helpful resource. So, Dr. Kim, are you ready?
I am ready. This is exciting. This is fun.
Yes. Okay, so our first few questions are related to like in-laws and family of origin.
Okay.
So question number 1, what are some practical steps to set boundaries with in-laws? My wife won't let go of her mom, so my wife typically routes our decisions through her mom prior to making a decision.
It's a good question. I think it's probably something that a lot of couples maybe go through a little bit. I've worked with couples that, and especially if they get the younger, seems like someone gets married, a couple, they're so used to taking things through one parent or the other. And I think to start with, you have to have your own family. And so you kind of separate yourself from your family of origin and you form your own family unit. So that would be the goal. And I think too, when we're dealing stuff with someone's in-laws, I know in-laws can make people very upset. I've heard all kinds of things about people talk about in-laws, but I think you always have to remember these are your spouse's parents and they are going to be a part of your life for as long as they're around. And so I think it's easy to kind of get mad at them and want to write them off. And yet I don't think that's usually setting boundaries is a much healthier way to handle those situations than just writing somebody off. And to realize that even in healthy relationships, we need boundaries. We've talked about through this entire series. But I think a couple needs to establish freedom, autonomy to make their own decisions. And I think, not knowing all the details with this particular situation, I think sometimes the parents hold on because they don't want that relationship to change. Some parents are really good about letting go there. But some people, like my parents were great in that with Nancy and I. In fact, we thought they didn't like us because they didn't interfere at all. But they would, if we came to ask them for advice, they would give it. But then you get some where the advice is unsolicited. And, in this situation, does the mom's answers lean more to what the daughter would want? All those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So I think a couple of things. If a spouse is still getting their emotional needs met with their family of origin that should be met in the marriage, that's an issue that probably needs to be dealt with. And so in this situation where the guy's asking the questions, how should he handle it? I think you start off with just praying for wisdom of what to say, how to say it. Again, being very careful not to criticize the parent, to find a good time to talk. And then I think you get that whole idea that we talk about so much of being a team. How are we being a team? Is this keeping us from being a team? Some practical, logical things that hopefully can override maybe, or at least make your spouse think beyond just the emotional thing that could be there. And then decide, okay, how are we going to do that? I mean, I don't expect you never to talk to your mom again, but can we decide that in the future that we're going to talk about it first? And if you talk about your mom, get her input, that's great. But we want to talk about things first and let's see how that goes. And so you kind of make a plan for that. And then I think if the mom continues to be just upset because of that and continues to want the daughter to talk to things about her first, then I think it's where I always think in an in-law situation, the one who is the child of those parents is the one that needs to talk to them. So in this situation, it would be the daughter. It's just going to come better from them. Doesn't mean it's going to go perfect, but they're the one who talked about it. And then I think if all that doesn't work and the parents are still intrusive, or maybe the wife can't quite get the picture of what we need to be, what is one? I think there's so many scriptures that back that up. The two become one, and that's not just physical; it's just in all areas. And that your first go-to should be the person that God gave you in marriage. And so, if all those things don't work, then I would say go to Christian counseling and let a third person come in. Maybe your wife will hear it different than they do from you. Maybe the counselor will come up with something that really is a win for everybody in the situation, which is really what you want. But mainly to focus on, this has got to be a win for your marriage. It can't be something other than that, because you always want your marriage to be the thing that wins in these situations.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So it's a lot of just getting on the same page together.
I think it is, and I think it's harder for some people than others. Depends how close someone is to their a parent,
Hmm.
and how they've got used to that. And making that transition isn't easy. And
Hmm.
I think couples that I see now I don't see that as much anymore with couples that I see getting married later,
Hmm.
because they've kind of established their own autonomy.
Hmm.
Most of them have lived alone by then. Most of them have, are working or have their own income in some way, so they've already made some of those. It seems that those problems come a lot with younger marriages,
Hmm.
where some of those things happen, and they're very used to still having their parents have a lot of input, which is fine. I mean, my parents were always there for us to go and ask questions for, but they never interfered. And Nancy's
Hmm.
parents lived in Houston, so it was kind of a different deal.
Hmm.
But I think that's what we've tried to do with our adult kids since they were married, is to be there for them. If they needed something, they could come and ask us, but we're not going to be. They had to establish their own relationships, and they've done a good job of doing that.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I think, Lara shared a great example on the podcast last week with our boundaries examples, where she talked about how she and Boone really never had any issues with their families. They dated for a long time, but once they got married, everything changed. But their
Yes,
boundary was such a simple one. It was just that they wouldn't make decisions kind of on the fly or on the phone or in passing. They would just talk in person. So if there was something that, say the family had a plan they wanted to make, rather than kind of calling up and saying, "Hey, how's this work? Does that work?" They said, "No, anytime we have these decisions, you and I will talk to each other in person. We'll make sure we're not distracted." Because they said it was just a lot of the conversation just needed to be between the two of them first, so that together they could decide before they communicated to the parents, which I thought was great.
I think that's great too. And I think that's probably not that unusual for things to do great when they're dating and they're excited and all that. And then once you're married, it's like, okay, we're
Hmm.
coming, we're coming back in. We're gonna storm the doors or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I just think it's something we talk about in premarital counseling. We talk about the relationships with those different people, and hopefully
Hmm.
those are healthy going into
Hmm.
marriage. But then what boundaries are going to need to be set, and where do
Hmm.
they anticipate being some problems? And I think the more you can think about that in a premarital way, then you kind of have your game plan, and maybe even sow
Yeah.
some seeds ahead of time. That I'm
Hmm.
looking so forward to the two of us being able to build our life together and make
Hmm.
decisions. And I know we'll make some mistakes, but I know we'll learn from them. Just that kind of thing, to kind of
Hmm.
begin to educate if they think there's going to be a problem with parents.
Hmm. That's good. That's really good. Okay, so moving on to our next question. This is question number 2. My husband, kids, and I live far away from my family and close to his. He knows how badly I've wanted to move back closer to my folks for a long time. I have a hard time connecting with his family, and I wish my children were closer to my mom. I often feel pressure from my family to move back, which makes it harder. My dad thinks I should manipulate my husband by leaving until he follows me, which I know is wrong. What do you think I should do?
Yeah, I think that's not that unusual, a question
Hmm.
that seems to happen. I've worked with couples, but I think how I guess how do they handle this in a way that really is good for the marriage? And so I would first pray for God's guidance in this. And I think too, take the time to kind of look at yourself. If what does God want me to do in this season? So this time that you may not be living close to parents, that okay, this isn't just a wasted time. And,
Hmm.
and what does God want me to learn? How to embrace this season, and those kind of things. And I think that it's the pressure from the family, I think, is rough, and I think it would
Hmm.
probably be honestly a good idea to talk to her parents, for she to talk to him and say, "Hey, I know you guys want me there. I want to be there, but right now this is where we are, and this
Hmm.
is my family, and this is where I need to be." Because if the dad is going as far as telling her to manipulate her husband, that you're not getting real objective, good, clear advice there. He may be
Hmm.
saying what you want to hear,
Yeah.
but that's not really going to make it that healthy. And then she didn't really say what her husband is saying about the move. Is he against it,
Hmm.
or is it because of his job? Those kind of things. And then, are there other options for her? Can you visit your family more often? Is there a way that you can get more contact for you and your kids with your mom, like she said she wanted to do? And the other thing I thought of maybe is to sit down, and could this couple come up, say, with a 5-year plan?
Hmm.
And maybe they're able to say, with my job, I want to get here. then I'll be willing to apply for a job in the area where you want to move back to, or something like that. Kind of have a bigger plan there and see if you can make that something that works. The other side is you got to be where your family is, where
Hmm.
your husband is, and where your
Hmm.
kids are, and you want them. And I think sometimes if you're continuing to long to be somewhere else, you don't establish the roots and things that will make the place where you are
Hmm.
really good. And
Hmm.
I've had people that have kind of struggled with that, fought that, and finally, once they accepted this is where we are, they've made it really good. And
Hmm.
I think when we first got married, Nancy had grown up in Houston. She never had left that area and family and moved to Oklahoma. And so I know that was hard for her, especially that first year.
Hmm.
But we had to learn. Once she said, "No, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to be," and she
Hmm.
did begin to have friends. She began to get roots. She got involved in different things, and so she made her life here to where I don't know how many years in, but I think she would have said, "No, I don't want to move back there because this is
Hmm.
my home now." And that's what I would want her to give it a chance for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because that really can't happen when you're just kind of daydreaming about being somewhere else.
No, no, and I get it. It's not easy,
Hmm.
but I think you're wasting a lot of time by doing that. And so
Yeah,
I
that's
think if
true.
you get some conversations with your spouse, maybe get a longer term plan, um, maybe that would help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it makes me think of too if the dad's kind of pressuring her to manipulate the husband, once they get closer to home, there's still going to be a lot of pressure there to do things a certain way, and that sounds like that could be actually be problematic in its own way.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Yes, if he's that controlling at a distance, what's it going to be
Mm-hmm.
like when they're there? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're expected for every meal if whatever it
Mm.
is.
Yeah, that's gonna be
So
hard to
that's a
nurture
red
that
flag.
marriage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay, that's good. I like where you landed on that. That's really great advice. All right, next question. My husband and I have struggled with communication and conflict resolution our whole relationship. I seek marital resources and counseling, but he's reluctant to change or try new things. He gets defensive when I hold him accountable and he says I'm trying to change him. I feel the need to protect myself from another disappointment when he stops working on the marriage, and I need him to give me a concrete plan for how he plans to fight for us. How do I set this boundary and take a step back from solving our relationship problems while letting him know I'm still in this and I love him? I just can't lead anymore.
Yeah, that's really good. I think I love what she said at the end though. That she is still in this and she still loves him. So
Hmm.
she's trying to make something work. Just to start out, I think couples counseling would be great if you can get him to go. I think it would
Hmm.
that way someone else would be there to hold him accountable. I mean, I
Hmm.
like doing that with couples when I counsel with them, give them some homework things to do. The accountability then comes between me and them
Hmm.
and takes the spouse out of that. I think just praying for him, and then I think working on herself. Continue to what can you do? Tell him you are for the marriage and you want it to be healthier for both of you. But right now you're doing most of the work. So what if you didn't? What if you didn't do all the work? What if you state what you need from him? Ask him what he needs for you. See
Hmm.
if he'll agree to work on him while you work on you. And I think that helps a lot when you say, "Hey, I got stuff I got to work on too." Because sometimes I think we think, "Okay, you're the one who's not doing anything. You're the one who's causing the
Hmm.
problem. You're the one why we can't communicate and we have conflict. So fix yourself, and I'll be here when you come back."
Hmm.
And I think it's always so helpful when both of you say, when you say acknowledge, well, there's things I need to work on too. Can we work on these things together? After you say, what do you need from me? What do I need for you? Work on them together.
Hmm.
But the boundary, I think, would be that you need him to step up and be the husband that God wants him to be. And I think that's kind of the bottom line is to put it. Now, I'm not going to define who you are as a husband. I can tell you what I need from you
Hmm.
and what I want from you, but I want you to be the husband God wants you to be because if you're that, you're going to be perfect for me. And
Hmm.
so involving God in the middle of it. That one to me too is kind of a tough one when you think of consequences if he
Hmm.
doesn't honor that boundary. And that would be why I think help of a Christian counsel would really be helpful. Even if your husband refuses to go,
Hmm.
I would go to get so that counselor can get the bigger picture
Hmm.
and then kind of help you define what the consequences are at that time. Because he may not respond. the prayer and the hope. And if you say it in the right way, you pray and hope that he does.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't, then what's your next step? And I think that's where a counselor could really help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And that's always, whether together or alone, it could still be helpful.
Absolutely. If he's not going to go with you, then the counselor can kind of help you make a game plan of what your next steps would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that third party is just going to be so helpful to not have it just be stuck between the two of them. Because it sounds like this has been going on for a while and it's continuing.
It does. It does. It continues, and that she's hung in there. And I think that happens sometimes. The one when they finally feel like they're doing all the work, that they just get tired. And it's like, I just can't do this anymore. It's just, I've done and done and done. And I'm not getting a response. And she just needs to know that he's still in it as much as she's still in it, and that he's willing to do the work like she's been doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's good. All right. Our next question. This one says, my husband agreed to finish a home repair project, but every weekend when he's off work, he tells me something else came up and does not work on the project. I've brought it up and I don't want to nag, but it really bothers me. Our home is in disrepair. It doesn't seem to bother him at all. I want to set a boundary, but I don't know what it would be. What should I do?
Well, I think his words are saying yes, but everything else is saying no, because nothing is getting done. The really simple answer, and I've had couples do this as we've talked through, is to hire somebody to do the repairs. And can you afford that? Or could you earn the money to do for this? And so maybe your boundary is that with him is that if the work isn't done in a month, I'm going to call somebody to do it. And also that you don't want that to become between the two of you, because I think that happens sometimes. A repair project or something, it's not done, and it builds up resentments and it builds up anger. All kinds of things can come out of that. And so I think, what is the best answer there? What's the simplest answer? And instead of being on him all the time, he obviously doesn't want to do it. He's probably not going to do it unless you're, threatening him or something like that. And so, but you need to get it done. So is there a way that can be done by someone else? I think that whole idea of hiring someone to do the things that you don't want to do, or if you can afford it, I think are really good. If I had a mother years ago, she had 5 kids, and that time in the evening that was 5 to 7, when it's so hard, trying to fix dinner, the kids are done with the day. They're tired and hungry, and some of them have homework and all that kind of stuff. And as we talked, it was just like, this was, and the dad in this situation really couldn't get home till about 6:30, just the way his job was. So what they did, as they talked through, they hired a woman to come in from 4 to 8, Monday through Friday, every day to cook dinner and help with the kids. That way the mom was more relaxed. She could help the kids with homework. She could play with the kids. And he said, probably a month into this, he said, that is the best money we've ever spent. I'm so glad we did that. It has taken conflict out of our marriage. She is more energized when I get home. I'm there to come alongside her and help, instead of just having to rescue her, before she passes out or something. And so I think sometimes thinking out of the box a little bit, what will work for the family as a whole. And it doesn't mean that he's not a good husband because he doesn't repair the project.
Right.
He may be great in all the areas. And if that's not his deal, okay, figure out a different way to do that. Maybe, if it's not, if he doesn't like mowing the lawn, maybe there's a kid on the block that just needs that experience to do that. And you can pay him something to get that experience. So look outside the box on something like that. Don't let those kind of things get in the middle of your marriage, is what I would say.
Oh, that's so good. I have 3 young men who are for hire if anyone needs their lawn mowed, because they're always trying to make money to do crazy things. So one follow-up question on that, because I've heard this issue happen, like with friends that, who've had this similar situation. So one of the pushbacks was, I feel like if I hire a third party, it will hurt his feelings. What would you say to that?
Well, I think you want to have a conversation. You don't want to just have him walk in and it's done. You go, well, you jerk, you didn't do it, so I hired somebody. I think if the ideal way to sit down and say, hey, we've been talking about else that I'm starting to get some resentment a little bit. I don't like that. I thought about maybe us hiring someone. How do you feel about that? And then I think you can, if he says yes, then say, okay, can we put a time limit on it? And then is it okay after that time passes, if you still haven't had time to do it, we hire someone? I mean, I think getting that conversation and getting it on the table. So you don't want to make Uh, you want to do it and throw it in his face. That's not what
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to do. You're trying to accomplish something at home that needs to be done. You're also trying
Mm-hmm.
to make your husband let your husband do the things that he's best at, that he's good
Mm-hmm.
at, and so
That's good.
sometimes we can lose sight of those things because he hadn't fixed the door that kind of won't close all the way because it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be the hinges need to be fixed or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Making it a two-person conversation, not just one person taking
Absolutely.
charge. That's great.
Yes.
That's really good. And I like those creative solutions too, like the other one you shared. I mean, it's so helpful to get out of that kind of like it has to be this way or that way because it doesn't. There's usually creative ways to solve a problem and we're just not thinking of them. We're stuck, right or wrong, yours
Right.
or mine, and that's not helpful.
And I think that's where really a Christian counselor can help. Just get
Mhm.
that other perspective. They're not emotionally involved in it like you are. And
Mhm.
you're both usually at that time so locked in with your positions, you really don't think out of the box. And
Mhm.
so someone objectively, a lot of times can come up with something that really makes sense, that will work, and it'll work for both of you and for your marriage. And that's what you
Yeah.
really want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, for sure. Okay, next question. My relationship with my dad is troubled. He's a source of emotional hurt for me. He's negative and controlling, and I stay distant from him. My husband has come into the family as a peacemaker, and he tries to bridge the gap with my dad, even though I want no relationship or contact with
Mm.
him. My husband and I communicate these things to each other, but there is no easy answer. Now that we have a baby, my dad wants to be grandpa to our little boy. He's sweet with our baby, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what to do. My heart aches every time I have to spend time with my dad. Any advice?
Well, I feel sorry for. I mean, that's a tough situation to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if your dad to go to counseling with you, that'd be great. Now that doesn't always work. I've had it where the dad comes and he's so stuck in his ways, and the
Mm,
session didn't go very good, and he didn't come back. And then I've had
mm,
other situations where the dad came, he heard the adult child, and things really made a difference. But I think it's worth trying that.
mm-hmm.
And then I think you have to set some boundaries with him. When he's around your family, no negative comments, none of that
Mm,
controlling behavior, and give good examples there. Don't just throw out a blanket, say, these are some things that I'm talking about, and
mm,
these are the things that I can't let you do around me, our family, or certainly our child as our child grows up.
mm,
Um, and then if the consequence is that the time with that he has with the grandchild will be limited and maybe even supervised,
mm,
and that's okay,
mm,
because your job is with your immediate family and to take care of that child and to raise him in as healthy a way as you can. uh, the deal with the husband, I know that's going to be frustrating from him because probably in
mm,
a lot of situations he's been able to make everything okay, be the peacemaker. Sometimes people ignore that. Some people don't embrace that at all. And so it
mm,
seems like that's not working with her dad at this time.
mm,
And so I think it's time to take that next step. And that's really the tough love. It's to set those
mm,
boundaries, not continue to accept that unhealthy behavior. And then I think for her, she really just doesn't care much for her dad right now because of behavior, it sounds like.
mm,
And what does it need to do for her to, if you set these things in place, if your dad agrees to them, what does it mean to forgive him? What does it mean to look at him in a different light? That doesn't mean you just lay down and you're setting boundaries so he doesn't run over you anymore. But is there a way to make this relationship healthier than it is today?
mm,
And in the big picture, if all those things can happen, I think it's a win for everybody.
mm, mm. That's good. So going back to the first thing you said when you talked about going to counseling together, how many sessions do you think it would take to kind of get a feel for whether that's a good thing or whether that's not going so well?
I think you'd know the first session, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think you
Mm-hmm.
know when, how, I ask a lot of questions. And so how does that person respond? How's the dad responding in counseling? How
Mm-hmm.
is he really stuck in his ways? Is he open to consider some different things? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of where the counselor can kind of ask some questions and kind of get a gauge on where this is. Uh, and then at that point, one thing I do in these situations is ask them, do you feel like this was helpful? Do you want to come back with your daughter again?
Mm-hmm.
Because then if he says yes, he has made a commitment. At
Mm.
least he said it verbally. May not mean his heart, but he said it
Yeah.
verbally.
Yeah.
And so then I would say, okay, let's schedule another time. And so
Mm-hmm.
take it a step at a time. Then maybe you just got through a little bit and he's saying, I got to do this for myself and my daughter and now my grandchild. So,
Mm-hmm.
but if the person is really stuck in his ways, I mean, I've had guys end up yelling at their adult child. I've
Mm.
had people walk out the door of it.
Gosh.
And so you just know as a counselor, you don't know what you're going to get till somebody gets in there, and you pray for
Mm-hmm.
the best and hope for the best and
Mm-hmm.
do the best you can. But I think that also in those situations that I just mentioned, it was the daughter in both those cases information they needed. That,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how am I going to handle this now? Because dad's not willing to change. He's not
Mm-hmm.
willing to work on it. Now what do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
So you get good information either way. Just if he
Mm-hmm.
buys in, it's a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I can see how it would just be hard to be the daughter in this situation and hope for the best, but you also would you kind of feel like you'd already seen how he behaves. So it'd be hard to hope, I think.
Yes, it is, and it's. But I think you come into counseling, you always have hope that things will be
Mm-hmm.
better,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, one situation we probably I spent the next couple of sessions with her just going through that whole meeting and how it
Mm-hmm.
affected her and the things he said and how
Mm-hmm.
that relates to other things and helping her work through that to
Mm-hmm.
get to the point where she could figure out how to have a relationship with my dad that's healthy for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. All right, so we've got a couple more questions. Next one. My husband wanted to start a business, and I supported him. Since starting the business, our marriage is disconnected, our finances are horrible, we don't have a single dime to our name, and no savings. My husband says our only choice is to stick it out. The business has become a liability and not an asset. I'm a mess because bills aren't getting paid on time, but he says that's what the grace period is for. This is really troublesome. I don't have peace about any of this, and I don't know what to do. Is there a way to set a boundary that will save us from financial ruin, or do I just keep quiet or keep waiting?
That is a really tough question.
Mm-hmm.
In counseling, I would want to know a couple things to start off with. As he starts, does he have a business plan?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, can you reference that? Is it on track? Or if it's not, how far behind is it? Maybe a boundary is that, hey, would you be willing to bring in a CPA, business advisor, so that they could objectively help us assess the business and where it is today, where it's heading in the future? Yeah, I think it's really hard for a guy, especially if this was kind of a dream for him, if it's not working, to say it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I think for guys, it's just hard for us to get there because it's a hope and a dream. It's kind of our baby, and then it's not working. And when do we need to let go? And so I had one couple that were similar situation, and they decided that if the business was not profitable, and they set a date, that he agreed that he would close it and they would
Mm-hmm.
move on. That was really helpful because it
Mm-hmm.
gave an end date. It made her feel like, okay, maybe rough for another couple of months, but then we're going to kind of work things out. At least there was some hope for her. And I think pray for him. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on with him? Why is it hard for him? Try to be a teammate. Is there anything you can do to help him? I would certainly ask that in the
Mm-hmm.
situation. Um, but I think it's what's going to happen if he continues along that path, and I think you need access to financial information,
Mm-hmm.
and if it continues to drain the company, your family, um, you may need something like a structured separation for a while he works things
Mm-hmm.
out to protect yourself and your kids. And I
Mm-hmm.
would do that under the guidance of a Christian counselor. For me, when the separation is to help give them a break in time to get things back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's to work on what they need to work on and then to work on the marriage. It is not a step toward divorce. It is a step away to get things healthy in the marriage. And so I think you need a Christian counselor to help you do that. You don't want someone that's going to try to separate you or get you a divorce or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the purpose of it. It's a purpose and to send a message,
Mm-hmm.
that this really is important. I don't see how we can live owing all this money or whatever the situation is. So
Mm-hmm.
come to a plan and get things working.
Mm. Yeah, that's really tough. So, I mean, is there anything for the financial piece that she can do to sort of protect them, or to?
I mean, you can always talk to an attorney. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I thought of maybe a safer step would to be, hopefully he does have a CPA. Can we
Mm-hmm.
meet with your CPA together? I just
Mm-hmm.
want to understand this better. I'm for you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm scared and I need some information so I can accept or know where we are and where we're going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you don't, in a situation like that, especially with a small business, you started it with he started with your blessing, that you have a right to look at the finances on it. I mean, you shouldn't be
Yeah.
hiding anything. It's two become one, no matter what it
Mm-hmm.
is. And so she needs to know exactly where things are,
Mm-hmm.
which might be very discouraging. Maybe it'll be a little
Mm-hmm.
helpful. You don't really know, but I think get as much information as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he continues this path, then I think, you could say, I'll talk to an attorney about is there something I can do legally to protect myself?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a co-signer on everything, then that's a different situation. That's tough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are some good starting places to get some information and move on from there. And that's not going to be easy because even if she gets the information, it sounds like it's not very good to start with.
Yeah, and I think she asked at the end, does she keep quiet or keep waiting? I think with what she's telling here, I would say it's time to just address the issue
Mm-hmm.
and and
Yeah.
and be very matter of fact about it, but be loving
Mm-hmm.
also.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, just keeping being a little bit unaware or not dealing with it, it's not going to get better on its own.
No, it's not. It's not.
No. No. Well, that was some helpful advice, and we've covered a lot of topics today.
We
What
have.
what final piece of advice would you leave for our listeners today, Dr. Kim?
Well, I appreciate everybody that wrote questions in. I wish we could gotten to every one of them. I think that what I would say is that there's always hope.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you're going through, there's always people there to help you, to come alongside you, whether it's a mentor couple or close friends or a Christian counselor or something like that. And so when you've got a problem, address the problem.
Mm.
That's one thing I've always said. Get it on the table. I don't care how bad it is. We can't deal with it till it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, get it on the table. Get what help you need so you can do that. It's a little hard in these questions as we're doing them because we don't have the whole picture. I haven't spent an hour or two with each one of these people. So I try to not say something that's going to box them in, to give them some options, things they can do like that. But the main thing is that with God, there's always hope. That God has a plan for your marriage. He did from day one. He still does.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way to get there. And so take the steps that you need to set you on that path.
Mm. Yeah, that's great advice to leave us with, because it sounds like, in most situations, kind of like you just said, you got to get the thing on the table and then God will help you work it through.
Yeah,
He will.
absolutely. And, it may not come out exactly like you thought it would be or
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be, but God's going to be with you whatever happens. You can't make
Mm.
someone else change. You can only take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that is good. That's good. Well, thank you for all of that great wisdom and advice. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@awesomemarriage for help with questions or for prayer. We always love hearing from you. We are so thankful for the listeners who sent these questions in today, and we pray they are helpful for your situation. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day and do something awesome for your marriage today.